They'd met as teens, but were in it for the long haul.
Hey, miss, do you need some help?
They were together for a long time.
They were building a life together.
They had their children, the picket fence, that fairy tale life.
Until a brutal attack tore it all apart.
She's got a stab wound to the middle chest.
She had scratches. She had bruises.
Stay ready.
It was quite a struggle.
The investigation suggests a love triangle gone wrong.
Do you think she's dating anybody else?
It's possible.
There have been rumors.
But is it her longtime boyfriend?
There was some jealous anger there.
Things have not been great between them.
Was it the new man in her life?
He recently got out of jail.
They were together that day.
She told him that she was done.
Or was it even more complicated than detectives imagined?
DNA was found under her fingernails.
Someone they never heard of.
I'm trying to give you an opportunity to explain.
What are you doing?
June 11th, 2016. It's a few hours before sunrise in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a blue-collar city of 600,000.
It was a manufacturing city for many, many years. A lot of breweries and a lot of factories.
It's sort of a small Chicago. It grew out of German and Polish roots.
After the war, a lot of African Americans came here looking for better opportunities.
But like a lot of the Rust Belt, those opportunities eventually faded.
Once the manufacturing left, many people who had skills could not find work.
Crime was and continues to be a problem in the city of Milwaukee.
Our homicides have increased, our shootings have increased, stabbings. It actually got the nickname Killwalkie.
And just after 4 o'clock that morning, the city's reputation hits too close to home for Antonio Sharp.
Stay ready.
Antonio calls 911 and reports that his friend, Danielle, has been stabbed.
It's bad, real bad.
Antonio was panicked. He is, at that moment, trying to prevent her from bleeding out.
Put pressure on that. I don't know.
It was a pretty bad scene right from the get-go.
Sam, come on.
We're using the towel to try to stop the bleeding from the chest.
Stay with me, D. Put pressure on that. Stay with me.
They just try to do whatever they can to keep her alive.
But time is running out.
She's lost a tremendous amount of blood.
Please hurry. Please.
26-year-old Alexandria Danielle Taylor lived every day to the fullest.
She was a fun-loving person who loved life.
She had amazing friends, very full life.
But it hadn't always been easy.
Danielle's teenage years were full of drama.
Danielle had a rebellious streak. She got into it with her mom often.
She was in and out of the house. Unfortunately, she was couch surfing.
It was while she was between places that the teen met Rick Ramsey.
Danielle was about 15 when she met Rick.
Hey, miss.
He was about 19 at the time.
You need some help?
And he'd experienced hardship in his youth as well.
His parents were addicts, and he had been in foster care.
Yeah, I'm all right.
Are you sure? You shouldn't be out here so late.
I don't have anywhere to go tonight.
Rick offered her a place to crash.
To Danielle, his chivalry was attractive.
They formed a relationship, and eventually they become an official couple. She was enamored by the fact that he was more mature than she was.
It's typically appealing for young girls to date older men because of their status and because of how mature they are and the stability that they might have.
And a steady relationship with Danielle was equally good for Rick.
Danielle encouraged him to get off the streets and find a job.
She was probably a little more mature than most of the girls her age.
And with Danielle's encouragement, Rick put his days on the streets behind him.
They also started a family.
In 2008, they welcomed their first daughter. And then 6 years later, they had another child.
And by 2016, it looked as if this young couple had built a beautiful life together.
They had been together for 11 years.
They really felt like they had it all.
There is a lot of love there. They were hoping that they would have an opportunity to grow old together.
But now those hopes appear to be in mortal danger.
Her friend Antonio calls 911 and reports that she has been stabbed.
There's blood everywhere.
It's a chaotic scene. Someone is literally dying while you're awaiting what seems like a very long time for the police to arrive.
When first responders arrive, they find Antonio and his sister still holding pressure to Danielle's wound.
They're desperately trying to save her.
As first responders take over, an officer arranges for Antonio and his sister to be transported down to the station.
That way they can get their formal statement on what exactly happened.
Because the police are now investigating a homicide.
After a few moments of trying to revive Danielle, the EMTs pronounced her dead at the scene.
The young lady happened to be past medical attention.
But as first responders exit to make way for detectives, a car comes barreling down the street.
This car comes to a quick screeching stop.
Whoa, 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 whoa. She's not supposed to be here. Hey, hold on. Where's Danielle? Hold on. Where is she? Hey, where is she?
He's trying his best to barge his way past the cops.
He's crossing the do not cross tape line, running through towards the residence where the victim is still lying.
The man is Danielle's boyfriend, Rick Ramsey.
He is belligerent, he's upset, he's not responding to officers' commands to calm down, to stay out of the crime scene.
The officer has to physically restrain him.
And he says that she is not supposed to be here.
She's not supposed to be here.
26-year-old Danielle Taylor was happily raising 2 daughters with her longtime boyfriend, Rick Ramsey.
They had been together for 11 years and had a happy home, the picket fence, that fairy tale life.
But now, EMTs have just pronounced Danielle dead inside her friend Antonio Sharp's home.
Soon after, a car screeches up to the scene. Danielle's boyfriend, Rick, jumps out of the car and crosses the crime scene tape.
Where's Danielle? Hold on. Where is she?
The officer has to physically restrain him from continuing to try to push by.
Where's Danielle?
But Rick is still screaming, yelling, refusing to calm down.
Eventually, Rick is placed under arrest for disorderly conduct.
Go ahead and get him down to the station.
I figured the best thing to do was take him into custody, get him in the car, and get him away from the scene to get things calmed down.
I need to see my girl.
While Rick is taken to the station, detectives turn their attention to the crime scene.
Outside of the house, there are 2 large pools of blood, but no distinct trail that would lead the police to believe whatever happened to her likely happened at the house.
Near the blood pools, they see a single earring, as well as a woman's wig and a wallet. The wallet contains Danielle's ID and her credit cards.
Not far away, detectives find a broken blade from a knife.
On the knife, there is inscribed stainless and china, which leads the police to believe that it is part of a kitchen set.
Then the detectives head inside the home.
The victim is on the living room floor. She's got a stab wound to the middle chest. She's got a stab wound to her left temple.
Since the killer left Danielle's wallet on the ground outside, detectives suspect they're dealing with a crime of passion.
This wasn't just someone stabbing her, taking her purse, and running away. This was somebody who took some time to inflict some pain.
She had scratches. She had a black eye. She had bruises up and down her body.
She has a tear to her earlobe, like an earring was torn from it.
Looking at all of the circumstances, it was an emotional, violent altercation that occurred.
Hoping someone may have witnessed the struggle, detectives begin knocking on neighbors' doors.
It's still before dawn, and most people say they were asleep. They didn't hear or see anything. But there is one woman who said that she left her bedroom window open and said that she was awakened by an argument.
She could hear an altercation that was clearly between a man and a woman.
I tried to ignore it.
But then she heard a woman scream.
At that point, that she got out of bed and she went to go look at her window to see what was going on.
But when she did that, she didn't see anything.
She waited for a moment, but she didn't hear anything else.
So she ignored it and went back to sleep.
But while she didn't see the fight that preceded the stabbing, there may still be a witness.
She has a Ring doorbell camera. It's right across the street, so there's a lot of potential for evidence off of that.
Man, would you mind if we got a copy of the footage from your doorbell camera?
Of course. Can I email it to you?
Yeah. You have a good morning.
Thank you.
After speaking with the neighbor, detectives returned to the station.
They need to get statements from Danielle's friend Antonio, his sister, and Danielle's boyfriend, Rick.
The detectives start with Rick.
He's calmer than he was at the scene, but he is very emotional.
I know y'all got a lot of questions for me, but I got some questions too. I don't know what happened. My girl didn't nobody tell me nothing. As soon as I got to the scene, I freaked out. Okay. I just want to know what happened.
Rick is saying, I was just with her at 3 a.m.
That's just an hour before Antonio's 911 call.
I met her at the gas station with Atkinson and Keith.
Rick admits that things had been rocky between him and Danielle, so she had recently moved out.
According to Rick, it was only temporary.
She said she needed some space to get away from me for a while.
But he says that when they met up at the gas station earlier that morning, they'd gotten into a fight.
According to Rick, they got into an argument over money.
If you was to give my phone and get her phone, you would see it in all the same.
He says she drained his bank account a few days ago.
How much money was that about?
It was about $600.
And that was like paycheck money?
Yeah, that's my paycheck money.
He was very upset. He wanted to talk to her and get his money back.
She know we got bills to pay.
According to Rick, that's why he'd asked her to meet him at the gas station.
But he said when she did, they soon fell into an argument.
It was like a heated moment because we were both trying to explain ourselves.
He was a little intoxicated. And according to Rick, when Danielle got there, he could tell that Danielle was a little intoxicated too.
I took her purse from her because she still had a bottle of liquor in her purse. I'm like, man, put this down. You don't need this.
This gets Danielle very angry.
Give me that.
Hey, it's mine.
And according to Rick, their heated argument had turned violent.
That was when she snagged me.
Detectives investigating Danielle Taylor's murder have learned that barely an hour before someone stabbed her to death, she had gotten into an explosive argument with her boyfriend, Rick Ramsey.
Rick says he was trying to wrestle Danielle's purse away from her to keep her from drinking anymore.
They get into a struggle and shouting match in front of the gas station.
He says she gave him a black eye.
Hey, it's mine.
Rick managed to keep the purse and take it to his car.
And Danielle stormed off.
He followed her and was able to catch up with her.
Come here. Where do you think you're going? Come here.
It's at this point that Danielle tries fighting him again. So they get into another altercation.
She had grabbed my face, boom. And then when she grabbed it, she pulled two of my dreads out.
He said he tried to defend himself, but she scratches his arm.
And he says that while they were fighting, a police car pulled up next to them.
They was coming east, and then they like, yeah, they put the little sirens on.
They came up and sort of broke it up.
What the hell's going on? No problem, officer.
I wasn't afraid to talk to officers. I didn't know. I know I didn't do nothing wrong.
Break it up and go home.
The policeman suggests that they both go their separate ways and call it a day.
And as far as the patrol officer was concerned, that's what happened with Rick and Danielle.
She walked that way, and I walked towards my car.
But Rick admits that after the police pulled off, he tried to follow Danielle.
I tried to hit the blocks to see if I can see her.
Rick did not want to let it go. He wanted to talk out this issue with Danielle.
But Rick says that after circling the area a couple times, he was unable to find her.
I didn't know where she went. So I said, it. And I went home.
Only he didn't stay there long.
I went upstairs to my room. I looked in my room, looked at my bed, my bed empty. So I'm like, I get in my car.
He decides he's going to go over to his sister's house.
And once he got there, he was greeted with horrific news.
His sister allegedly gets a call saying that Danielle has gotten into some sort of trouble and she has been stabbed.
I'm like, she can't be gone because I was just with her. Like, we was just talking.
Rick says that as soon as he heard that Danielle had been stabbed, he'd raced to Antonio's house.
I made all type of illegal turns into red lights just to get there.
He says he had no idea what happened to Danielle after she left the gas station.
But is he telling the truth?
Rick admitted that he went looking for Danielle after their argument.
And he went out of his way to explain his injuries. So could the altercation outside the gas station be a cover story?
You guys have had fights before? We haven't had a fight in God knows how long. I say over a year and a half. Oh, really? So it's dangerous, that's true. Yeah.
And now detectives want to know, if Rick didn't kill Danielle, who did?
Do you think she's dating anybody else or seeing anybody else on the side?
It's possible.
There have been rumors spreading around that she was, in fact, in another relationship. She was cheating.
And Rick admits that was another reason he'd asked Danielle to meet him at the gas station early that morning.
Before I was trying to get something out of her, too, at the same time, which was the truth.
Right.
One of the motives for him going to see her was to see if there was any truth to these rumors.
And he wanted information as to what the status of their relationship was going to be.
She basically has left him. He does not want her to leave.
But according to Rick, that doesn't mean he had a motive for murder.
I know y'all trying to figure out if I killed my girl or not. But I did not kill my girl, man.
Despite Rick's protests of innocence, detectives decide to hold him in custody.
He's booked on disorderly conduct charges.
They take his clothes to see if there is any DNA evidence on his clothes that would connect him to the murder of Danielle Taylor.
Then the detectives move on to Danielle's friend, Antonio Sharp.
They want to get him into the interrogation room to get a formal statement from him.
He was the first individual to see her after the altercation.
Also, detectives suspect Antonio may be more than just Danielle's friend.
According to Rick, there had been rumors that Danielle had been hooking up with someone else.
Detectives wonder if he had found out that she left to meet with Rick.
And if so, had that made him angry?
When detectives sit down with Antonio, he doesn't appear angry.
He was obviously distraught and upset over the incident.
Can't believe this happened.
He says he wants to do whatever he can to find out who killed Danielle.
Okay, so how long have you known Danielle?
I've known her forever.
Antonio was a childhood friend of Miss Taylor.
So you're just friends?
Well,
He admits that he's always had feelings for Danielle.
But he says that over the years, they'd lost touch.
He recently got out of jail himself on a burglary charge.
I looked her up when I got out, but she was with somebody else.
Even though he's never met Rick, he knows that he's Danielle's long-term boyfriend. And he knows that they have 2 kids together.
But that hadn't stopped the old friends from reconnecting.
They were just friendly at first, but then he learned that she too had feelings for him.
I got you now.
Well, I know now.
And that's when their relationship turned sexual.
Were you worried that Rick would find out?
I was.
But according to Antonio, Danielle wasn't.
She told him that she was done with Rick.
She just wanted to get out.
Antonio Sharp, the man who called 911 and reported that Danielle Taylor had been stabbed, says the 26-year-old mother of 2 had been planning to leave her boyfriend, Rick Ramsey.
Antonio tells detectives that Danielle wanted to leave Rick for good.
What about Rick?
Antonio supposedly knows this because she had been dating him behind Rick's back.
However, Antonio claims that he wasn't the only reason Danielle wanted to leave Rick.
Antonio says that Rick beat her up regularly.
You ever see him hit her?
No, but that's what she said.
He said she kept complaining about Rick and the violence that was in the home.
Antonio claims that there have been times she has had bruises and marks.
So she'd left Rick and was staying with Antonio and his sister.
Antonio had been staying with his sister since he'd been released from jail.
But as detectives know, leaving an abusive relationship can be really scary.
Is that what happened in Danielle's case?
If he had found out that she was trying to move on, it would have pushed him over the edge.
Hoping to learn more, detectives ask Antonio to walk them through the events leading up to Danielle's murder.
He's saying that they were together that day.
They had a few friends over and had been drinking out on the porch.
Antonio says that once the party wound down at around 10 o'clock, he'd gone inside.
He ends up falling asleep on a couch.
Danielle woke him up sometime later.
Hey, Antonio.
What?
I'm about to go out for a little bit. Can we pick that up?
Okay.
Antonio says he fell back to sleep and didn't wake up until about 4 a.m.
He hears a knock at the door.
When he opened it, he was shocked to see Danielle standing there.
Danielle! Oh my God!
Her wig's gone and her face was splattered with blood.
She falls in his arms. He lays her down.
Dave, what happened?
That's when he noticed the stab above her chest.
Who did this to you?
He kept trying to ask who did this, but by this time, she was unresponsive.
Antonio says that by then, his sister had come into the room.
Get my phone, go get my phone. Dave, come on, say something.
He begins calling 911. He runs and gets a towel to try to stop the bleeding from the chest.
Here, put pressure on it. Hello, it's bad. It's real bad.
And then the police finally arrive.
On the surface, Antonio's story sounds genuine.
Antonio is crying and obviously in great distress.
Or could they be tears of guilt?
Detectives wonder if he had found out that she left to meet with Rick.
Maybe he was waiting up for her when she got back and a confrontation ensued.
To see if they can verify Antonio's story, the detectives turn to his sister.
She confirms that she, Antonio, and Danielle have been drinking on the porch.
And she says that when she went to bed around 11, her brother was asleep on the couch.
Did you see or hear Danielle leave?
No. Next thing I heard was Antonio screaming downstairs, so I ran down there to see what was going on.
And when she got downstairs, Danielle was already collapsed on the floor, bleeding.
Did Danielle ever tell you that Rick was abusing her?
No, but I knew he was.
She has had bruises and marks. It was hard not to notice.
And she swears that her brother could not have been the source of those bruises.
She says right off the bat, my brother had nothing to do with this murder. And there's no way with how much he cared about Danielle that he would have ever hurt her.
But while she was happy for her brother, she worried what Rick would do if he found out about Antonio's relationship with Danielle.
She thinks Rick found out about the new relationship from a mutual friend and wouldn't be surprised if he wanted to do something about it.
That's all we have for now. Appreciate you coming in.
Had Rick found out? And had he done something about it? Detectives suspect the truth lies in the surveillance video.
Hey, come take a look at this.
In addition to the neighbor's doorbell cam, the detectives also requested security footage from the gas station, where Danielle met with Rick.
Reviewing the footage appears to confirm Rick's story.
He was at that gas station where he did say that he met up with her before the homicide happened.
In the footage, it's clear the two are in a heated argument.
There's even footage of the police officer coming past and sending them in their separate directions.
After the officer leaves, they see that Rick follows Danielle and goes in the same direction. So far, it all fits with what Rick had told them.
According to Rick, he couldn't find Danielle, so he gave up and went home.
But when they review the doorbell camera footage from Danielle's neighbor, it tells a different story.
On the video, the detectives see Danielle walk up the street towards the house.
And not 1 minute after, we see a figure follow behind her.
Someone who detectives are pretty sure is Rick Ramsey.
That's what's called damning evidence.
Rick, what are you doing?
When questioned about the murder of his girlfriend, Danielle Taylor, Rick Ramsey has admitted that he'd had an altercation with the 26-year-old mother of two less than an hour before she was fatally stabbed.
The police had broken up the fight, and Rick said he went home afterwards.
But when they pull up the footage from the neighbor's house, it's obvious that he had been lying.
The video shows Danielle walking up to her friend Antonio's home. But it also reveals that someone is following her.
Someone who detectives are pretty sure is Rick Ramsey.
He has one hand behind his back, which leads police to suspect that he might be carrying something.
On the sidewalk in front of the house, Danielle and Rick have a brief confrontation.
Then they both disappear out of view.
Then, a few minutes later, Rick comes back into view.
Rick is walking away from the house and is no longer carrying anything.
After watching the video, detectives bring Rick back to the interrogation room.
At first, he sticks to his original story.
Everything that I'm seeing right now is what happened.
But then the detectives tell Rick that they have video that shows him following Danielle to Antonio's house.
How do you explain that? How do we explain video?
I don't know.
They do what we call becoming the Jesus moment.
It has little effect on Rick.
I really don't know where else to go. You don't remember it? It's your story, and it's yours. You can stick with it.
Then they haul Rick back to his cell. But after another 24 hours behind bars, Rick's story starts to change.
He's brought back into an interview room yet again.
He says, you know what? It is possible that I found her and that we did have another argument. I can't remember much because, remember, I was drunk.
Something come over me, like something get into me, and I'm like, did I black out and do something?
You began to think about the consequences of your behaviors, and you began to try to develop some rationalizations.
Did the devil come into me and start controlling me like that for real? And then to get out of my head, I wanted to be found, man. I wanted to be found. I feel a lot better when it's found.
I guarantee it.
I feel a lot better when it's found.
As he's confronted with the counters to his lies, you're going to see acceptance.
My brain is rattling, man. It's rattling. Because my girl gone, man. And she not coming back. And I want her to rest in peace. I want her family to have peace.
Now that they can finally get some of these things that they're holding in off of their chest, you almost become that priest that you come and make a confession to.
I gotta get it out. I gotta get it out. Jim. I killed my girl, Jim.
I know.
I killed my girl, man. I killed my girl.
I know.
He did say, I killed her. And then he finally got into the description of how it happened.
He admits that he did, in fact, follow her.
He ends up finding Miss Taylor at the residence where this happened.
Rick says he parked down the street.
Then, he says he began searching through Danielle's purse.
Remember, he kept the purse after the police made them go in their separate directions.
He was looking for the knife he knew Danielle always carried with her for protection.
This was a kitchen knife.
He decides to take it with him when he goes to confront her.
Rick, what you doing?
Is this where he lives?
Ooh.
You lie to me?
At some point, he says he grabbed her arm.
What happens next?
And she swung at me. That's when I stabbed her.
He said the anger wasn't so much of her cheating, the anger was of her not providing him with the truth. There's still some struggle. He said arms are flaring around and all that. And then that's when he does the second stab.
Do you remember the knife breaking?
And he claims not to know what he did with the handle of the knife either.
Somewhere, different world.
Even after the stab, all he can remember is not being remorseful, but being angry.
After I remember being in the car.
Coupled with the video evidence, Rick's confession is all that the police need to secure a conviction.
Mr. Ramsey was charged with the reckless homicide of his girlfriend.
But Rick decides to retain a lawyer. And the lawyer immediately comes in with questions about this alleged confession.
These interrogation tactics are empirically known to be very effective at getting confessions, but they're also known to get false confessions.
And when detectives get the DNA results back from the crime lab, it appears that Rick's attorney may have a point.
A man's DNA was found under Danielle's fingernails, but it is not the DNA of Rick Ramsey.
It's also not a match for Danielle's lover, Antonio Sharp.
Which means that there is a possible third suspect out there.
With a taped confession and surveillance footage that appears to show him at the scene of the crime, police and prosecutors are confident that 30-year-old Rick Ramsey is responsible for Danielle Taylor's murder.
That would be consistent with what the evidence shows.
They believe that this is an open and shut case.
Until the DNA test results turn the entire case on its head.
The evidence found under Danielle's fingernails does not match Rick Ramsey. And it doesn't match Antonio Sharp.
The results match for a third man, someone they never heard of.
His name is Kenneth Arnold.
It just so happened that he was incarcerated on another charge.
So detectives are able to bring him in for questioning.
We want to show you some pictures of some people that you might know. Okay?
Sure, go ahead.
They start off by showing him Danielle's photo, but Kenneth insists that he's never seen her before.
Never ever seen her.
Never.
The detectives know that's a lie.
We found evidence of your DNA. We're trying to give you an opportunity to explain because there might be a reasonable explanation.
Nonetheless, Kenneth insists that he has no idea how his DNA got there.
Your skin underneath her fingernails, like if she would scratch you.
That seems to ring a bell for Kenneth.
I've been having sex with girls around here.
Kenneth is known to be a little bit of a player.
It's kind of crazy. There's been a lot of sex partners.
Like a lot is like 5? 10?
Probably like 30.
30?
Yeah, 30 different women.
He says it is entirely possible that Danielle was one of them.
Question is, had he done more than sleep with her?
Did you kill this woman?
No.
Did you stab her?
No.
Despite the presence of his DNA, detectives think he's telling the truth.
They have no other evidence. There's no other motive or direct connection to Kenneth.
And he doesn't appear on any of the surveillance videos.
But the fact that it's Kenneth's DNA under Danielle's fingernails does put the prosecutors in an awkward position. One the defense will no doubt try to exploit.
The obvious argument is if he was the murderer and they engaged in a struggle, the victim may have clawed at her assailant and got his DNA under her fingernails.
When Rick goes on trial for murder in September of 2022, the prosecutors begin by focusing on his motive.
He found out that she's cheating on him.
And on the night of the murder, he confronted her about it.
Is this where he lives? Oh, don't lie to me.
He couldn't let her go.
He stabs her in the chest.
It was an emotional, violent altercation.
He stabbed her again, above her left temple.
And the prosecutors claim to have plenty of proof.
They presented the evidence of the fight earlier that day, which clearly occurred.
They show the surveillance video.
Most of all, they have Rick's confession. But when it's the defense's turn, they do their best to cast doubt on that confession.
During the interview, law enforcement repeatedly tell him that they have a video of him committing the murder. That was a lie. Law enforcement did not have a clear video of anything. The next line of attack for the defense was to get an expert witness to talk about false confessions. We did have our expert witness talk about techniques employed by law enforcement, sleep deprivation, lying about certain evidence they have, and pushing an individual towards the narrative that law enforcement is trying to get from that interview.
But that's all just the lead up to the defense's main point. That Danielle had Kenneth Arnold's DNA under her fingernails when she died.
He told police he didn't know the victim and then said, well, I may have slept with her, but I didn't know who she was. And nothing was followed up about that.
But the jury, with all the evidence, and especially the security footage, they just aren't buying it.
They find Rick guilty of murder.
He's sentenced to 30 years in prison.
If he completes his 30 years, he's still going to have another 12 years of probation, which means once he's out, he's still going to be monitored for 12 years.
Justice has been served. But that does little to lessen the tragedy of Danielle's death.
Because not only was there one life,